podcast is part of the Pod Syndicate family. For more criminally compelling shows, articles, and conversations, head to wearepodsyndicate.com.
We're back! It's time for another ETL Witcher Book Club. Hello, everyone. I am the Dijkstra, and this is my co-host, Ross. Hello, Ross.
Hello, everyone.
Ross Pawnee from the Bay Area.
Good to have you guys along with us for this incredible journey.
Yes, because we're talking about the 6th book and the 4th novel in the Witcher saga, The Tower of Swallows.
We're coming in home. Like we're getting to the end of this thing pretty soon.
Yes, we are. We've got one more book in the overall storyline, and then after that we have a prequel. So we're going to wrap this up in the next big, thick book. But first, we have to get through this book, The Tower of Swallows, or also known in some places as The Tower of the Swallow.
What's the story with that?
I don't know. It's just the Polish translation. I believe in Europe it's called the Tower of the Swallow, and here in America it's the Tower of Swallows. And
sounds good.
I would almost say, reading the book, it probably is the Tower of the Swallow.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't really remember them referring to anything as the Tower of Swallows, but the Tower of the Swallow makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, but it's close enough, right? But Can you believe this journey we've been on of The Witcher? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I've said in every single episode, and I'm sure people are getting sick of hearing it. The story really did not turn out the way that I initially thought it was going to. I really like the story. I think it's awesome, but it's such a departure from where I kind of had built things up in my mind.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, from those first stories of Geralt just battling monsters each story, showing up, having something to deal with, and then leaving. That's not what the overall story of The Witcher is about. It turned into something else, and it's kind of crazy, you know?
It is, yeah. It's not really at all about that. I mean, I'm happy. I'm not knocking the story at all. I'm happy with the direction that it's gone into, but it really, it's really almost kind of a dysfunctional family story. Almost, yeah. And I don't know, I think it's awesome.
I do too. I love the characters, absolutely love the characters. And I just, it's funny, we just want Geralt to find Ciri, Yennefer to find Ciri, and them all to be together. And obviously, we're going to have to wait a long time for that. We've been definitely waiting. They've all been through their own set of circumstances, and it's, I would say, the last book, Baptism Fire, which we both loved very much. We didn't get a lot of Ciri. All we got of Ciri was what Geralt was having visions of her. And we'd have a moment where, he was trampled by a horse, and then Ciri woke up in the night dreaming of her friend being trampled by a horse. And now we get to see what's going on with her. And I gotta say, as the book began, and we meet Visigota, cursing about the cold. He lives in a swamp, and it's gotten very, very cold. He sees this black mare standing there neighing, and he thinks it's a boy dead on the ground, and he turns it over, and it's a girl, but she's breathing, and it's Ciri, and she has this horrible gash in her face, and we're just wondering what the hell happened. And the book makes you wait a long time before you hear exactly what happened.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And what's funny is, I do want to talk about this. You and I would love to talk about the Netflix series.
Yeah.
We will talk about it in a future episode. But right now, I think it's important for us to stay on book, on point, and finish the book series. But I do want to talk to you about the Witcher Netflix series. But one complaint I heard of that from people is the time jumping that goes on there. But I gotta say, it's like the books. The books, the time jumps are all over the place in this book. And Andrzej Sapkowski loves to do that, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember everybody is kind of upset about the time jumps in the show. And it's understandably so. They are confusing. But if that was what they were trying to capture on the show, was like that level of confusion that we kind of had during the first book, because I don't know if you remember this, I didn't realize that most of that stuff was taking place at Melitala's temple until after the second listen. You know,
right.
it was very confusing. I'm not necessarily sure that was, we had to have that in the show, but you are correct in saying that he jumps around all over the place.
Yeah, and I'm kind of used to it by now, by this book.
Yes,
you know,
definitely.
I'm like going, oh, okay, I realize what's going on here. What's funny in the book, I know you listen to the audiobook. In the book, as you're reading it, there's always an asterisk. And that asterisk, I know, okay, we're changing location. It'll be like Visagota asking Ciri, what happened? Can you please tell me? And she goes, well, I will tell you. And then, period, sentence over, asterisk. And then it'll cut to Ciri rode into town. And this is her telling the story. And then asterisk. And so that's what happened. You know, that's how the time jumps happen. So in the Netflix show, they should have just showed a giant asterisk on the screen.
Yeah. Well, in the audiobook, I wish it would have been like one of those audiobooks back in the day where you could read along and it would play that tone when you were supposed to turn the page. That would be awesome if they gave us that. I know I complained in the first book about the music that was in the background and it being overproduced. Maybe they could have just brought it back just a little bit to let me know that we were jumping around a bit.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the Netflix series, which I enjoyed very much another time, but
definitely.
In defense of it, there's a lot of time jumping in the books, and that's all I wanted to say there.
Agreed.
And at the beginning of this book, we get to learn about the different seasons going on the continent, and we keep hearing more about the wild hunt, don't we? Passing overhead. And when they're around, it means the war's coming. War's been here for a while, but I like how the book kind of shows different people waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares.
Yeah, it was nice because it was like we get to revisit all these people that we knew in other stories. And so it was nice to say hi again, even though they were waking up from awful dreams.
Yeah, and even I thought it was funny, Philippa Eilhart, she wakes up in bed with some count's wife. You know, she's always sleeping with somebody different, but I thought that was a little funny thing there. But back to Ciri, we know this horrible thing has happened to her, and I was riveted in all of this beginning chapter trying to figure out what happened to her. And it's Visagota, he's journaling it as he's helping her, you know, writing down, and she has this horrible fever, and he's trying to figure out what roots to give her that won't kill her, different medicines. And finally, he gives her something that he was afraid would kill her, but it's the only thing that would help her, so he hopes she's strong enough, and he gives it to her, and she wakes up.
What was your first impression of him as a character?
Oh, I loved him right away. I just kind of loved his... there's something about hermits or being all alone and him just kind of talking to himself. I'm just kind of like on board with that, storytelling wise.
That says a lot about you, Jason.
Yeah.
No, the thing is with this book this series, I am so distrustful of everyone.
Oh, yeah.
That when they were talking about him, I was just like, he's going to turn out to be some like horrible mad scientist or whatever, and she's going to have to escape from him. Thankfully, that's not the case, but that, he's got me so on edge with every character in this book.
You were worried he was a creeper right away.
Yeah, exactly. I just kind of, maybe I watched too much Law and Order. I don't know.
Yeah, what's funny is, like, when he's cleaning off her body, he notices she has a tattoo of a rose, I guess, high up on her thigh. And then we learn more about that later. But
Yeah.
later on, Ciri kind of says, how do you know about the tattoo? And she kind of accuses him of being a creeper. And he tells her, no, that's not what it is at all. You know, I used to be a doctor. In fact, he was a professor at Oxenfurt. And the only reason he wrote something that kind of was anti-religious, and that made him... He got fired and cast out. He could have been put to death. And that's where he went to stay in Nilfgaard. And he, I think it was 10 years he taught at the academy until he published a metaphysical mysticism, a book on metaphysical mysticism or something like that. And then he was exiled under the threat of death. And I was like, man, you really need to keep these thoughts to yourself, buddy.
Yeah, it's not great for your career, I'll tell you that much.
So he hid in a hut. He inherited a hut in Ebbing. And then Nilfgaard annexed Ebbing, and all of a sudden it was part of Nilfgaard, and he was like trapped there because if he was found, he would be put to death. So he just stayed in his little tucked away swamp. And poor Ciri, when she awakens, and you know she knows something is wrong with her face, and she says, "Do you have a mirror?" And he's like, "No, I don't," and he's lying. Until she finally sees the mirror. I felt very bad for her.
Yeah, this entire book is, let's feel very bad for Ciri the whole time, basically.
I also love that her horse's name is Kelpie. She's good at naming
that's
horses,
awesome.
isn't she?
Yeah, Kelpie seemed like a pretty awesome horse, too.
Yeah,
way better than that lame Roach 3.
Yeah, exactly. I like at one point she does try to leave. He's like, "Hey, I'm not keeping you here." And she goes out to her horse and she tries to lift the saddle, but she can't. And she just kind of defeatedly goes back to the hut and just like lays down. It's like, she realizes like, if she's going to ever leave, it's not going to be for a long time.
Yeah, she's in very, very bad shape. For me, this book, it was kind of difficult to read in parts. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
it was like we come off of the last book, which was so full of joy and fun and dandelion centric and everything, and we go into this book. And this book, I like it. I think it's very necessary to the story, but it's such a downer, you know. And I think that might have been part of the reason why it took a little bit longer than the other ones for me to get through it. Because listening to Ciri go through all of this stuff, a character that we've kind of grown to love, you know, and seen her grow up and everything, go through all of this horrible stuff, was not the most enjoyable experience in this series for me.
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about, especially the chapter with Bonhart, when we meet Leo Bonhart. That was pretty difficult to read because we didn't know what he was going to do to her, and she's being abused. And that was pretty difficult. The main problem I had at any time is because I've talked about the holidays happened while we were reading this book. And man, there was a time like a week went by when I didn't pick up the book. I was just too busy doing stuff. And so when you set aside in the middle of a chapter like a week and you come back, you're like, okay, what was happening here? You're trying to remember. And we'll get to this later, but the hardest chapter I was on was the Dijkstra chapter.
Yeah.
And when he goes to Cahir, and I was just like, what is happening here exactly?
Yeah, you really have to have no distractions. You basically have to put some like white noise on in the background to drown everything out so you can make sure you get it.
These books, we love the characters so much and we're so involved in what's going on. Sometimes when it cuts to somebody else, and especially someone you don't have as much interest in, sometimes that kind of, you're like, oh man, when is this chapter ending? I don't care what's going on here. That happens a lot.
I don't even like Dijkstra.
Yeah. I mean, Dijkstra's fine and all, but I want to know what's going on with Ciri, or what's going on with Yennefer, or you know, with Geralt, because a lot of interesting stuff happens with Geralt here. But first, okay, finally, Ciri gets her stitches out, right? And she decides to tell Visigota about what happened to her. first she accuses him of being a creeper, but then he explains what happened to him and why he lives there as a hermit. He's not a creepy old man. This is kind of what ended up happening to him, having to stay there, or he would be put to death. So she tells her tale of Hotspurn. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
He finds the rats at this house where they've taken over. They've locked the people in a closet or something.
Yeah.
And a tattoo artist is working on Missile, putting giving her a nice rose tattoo. And, okay, first of all, the rats, they're a cocky bunch who are very bad influences on Ciri.
Yeah, I mean, she spends the time getting coked up and tattooed with them. They are not the best influence.
Oh, yeah, first of all, I forgot to take my line of fist tech before we started the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's this drug called fist tech that they're all snorting, like, oh, yeah, good stuff, or whatever. And I was like, what is going on here, man? Ciri needs to get away from these people. And she seems to be pretty content. She has an interesting relationship with Missile where they're there for each other, but also she wants her to keep her distance, like, stop touching me or get away from me, And when Hotspurn tells them that they're being hunted, and in fact, Bonhart, the famous bounty hunter, is after them. And they're all like, Bonhart, he killed the so-and-so gang, And they even say something like, if you filled a graveyard with everyone that he's killed, it would fill a half acre.
Uh-huh.
They're all cocky, like, well, he wouldn't be able to kill us, Well,
it's funny because up till this point, the rats have basically been invincible. They are the nobody can touch them. And so I was totally underestimating Bonhart when they mentioned him. I was just expecting him to be yet another person that the rats went through. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, what's funny is there are several times in the book where I'm wondering what's going to happen, but then I have to remember, oh wait, Ciri's okay now, and she's with Visigoda telling this story.
Yeah.
So I know she got away somehow, but obviously the rats are dead, so how did they die?
Yeah, definitely.
Something really bad happened to these people. And basically, Hotspurn tells them that Nilfgaard, who, they've attacked all of these lands, they're offering amnesty for all of these criminals. You come, confess your crimes, and basically you join their army, right? You're basically, was it indentured servitude? You're part of their military, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so he's like, you guys could be absolved of all of your crimes if you just come turn yourself in and everything's cool, In fact, you could come work for me, and I could be, using you as And so they kind of have the idea, like, yeah, we could do that, but then we could just escape when we're ready to move on,
Mm-hmm.
They think they have it all figured out. But everything is fine until Hotspurn starts talking about Nilfgaard, and that the Emir, he's doing this as a political move, because he's going to marry Princess Cirilla of Sintra. And, her ears kind of perk up, like, what? And she's like, this is an imposter. And she gets really mad, and she starts talking smack and getting attitude. And they're like, pipe down there, Falco. What's your problem,
Mm-hmm.
And she can't get over this, that somebody is basically enjoying her title and going to get benefits. But at the same time, she has to know that this is all a bunch of crap, that she can't go turn herself in. Like, she's kind of at odds with what she wants to do.
Yeah, she really is. It seems like she is almost conflicted about what she should do, because she wants to live up to the pride of her station, it seems, right. But she also, I don't really think, has much interest in allying herself with the people that basically killed her entire family,
Right. Hotspurn says, hey, I'll be staying in an inn a ways off, a couple miles down the road or whatever. If you guys wish to turn yourselves in, come and find me. So they're all, as soon as he leaves, they're all like, no, I know what we're going to do. We're going to go kill Bonhart. Yeah, let's go kill him. Nothing could stop the rats and stuff. And Ciri automatically knows she's not going to do that. She's going to go, in the morning, she runs off to find Hotspurn, but not before Missile questions her. And she explains that she will return after she writes everything.
So what do you think she's planning on doing? Do you think she's planning on going there to marry Emir, or is she going there to like wreck shop in Nilfgaard. I don't really quite understand what her plan is, or maybe she doesn't even know.
I don't think she's thinking things through here. I think she thinks she's going to go straight to Sintra and say, "Here I am." But then as she's riding for Hotspur, she's like, "Well, I can't really do that. There's no way I would make it there. They'll kill me," because it serves them better to have a fake Ciri than to have the real Ciri, kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And when
she's going to be much more difficult to control too.
Yeah, and when she arrives to Hotspur, she's kind of like all angry and stuff, and he's like, "Whoa, look at you!" And he's kind of smitten with her. Like, well, I should say he's kind of in lust with her. He's kind of comes on
definitely.
strong.
A little bit more than smitten. He's basically the creepy guy I was expecting Visigoth to be.
Yes, and he goes, "What is it you want to do in Sintra?" She says, "I want to ascend the throne." And he just kind of laughs like, "Okay."
Yeah, exactly.
He's totally hitting on her, but she's like, "I want his horse." She wants his horse so bad, which is Kelpie, the black mare. He wants her, but she wants his horse. So
yeah,
she kind of flirts with him back a little, doesn't she?
Oh, a little bit more than that eventually.
Well, bandits end up attacking, and they're trying to get away from him, and he gets hit in the back with a crossbow bolt. And they have no idea who these people are, but they hide in some bushes as their horses run off. And there's this cool bit where he has like this, what do you call it? Like a magical bracelet, but it's enchanted, where if he rubs it, his horse returns to him. We'll find him no matter where he is.
That's awesome.
I thought that was a really cool thing there. As he's laying there and he thinks he's dying, like his legs are going cold, he tells her that the reason he told the rats about Bonhart wasn't really to warn them, but it was to entice them to go right into his trap, to go find him, to challenge him to a fight. And he knew that they couldn't resist going after him. And she knows she has to warn them, but he's like, "Oh, kiss me, Ciri."
yeah, he really gets into it in this, last dying moments.
And she goes ahead and gives in to curiosity and stuff, and then he's like cold, and she realizes that he just died.
So creepy.
Yeah, and she basically has to stay with him there till morning because she's afraid the riders will come back. She, removes his magical bracelet, and she takes it for herself and calls the horse. Who cares about her horse, right?
yeah, definitely.
Not as impressive.
No Kelpie.
So the rats arrive in jealousy, and they demand that Bonhart come out of the inn that he's in. And of course, he comes out. And what did you think of the voice that Peter Kenny did?
Oh, it was great. His Bonhart voice was so ominous and terrifying. Basically, it was really good.
Yeah, and they're talking all sorts of smack, like, "Come on out here if you're not afraid." And he comes right out there.
Funny, I was thinking about this because Bonhart is he sounds Eastern European, which sounds kind of scary. But I'm wondering if in Poland, if he's got an American accent in that audiobook. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny because my voice I had for him in his head was probably deep and gravelly, and it wasn't even with an accent. And then I listened to that part of the audiobook, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's another way to go with it, I guess."
Mm-hmm.
But I wish they had crossbows or something. What were they thinking, not having any ranged weapons?
They just totally underestimated this guy. I mean, they basically walked through everybody else that they've faced, and so we're not expecting somebody of this guy's caliber of fighter.
Yeah, and there's 6 of them, and I think 3 of them at first are charging him right away, and he just parries them all and just cuts them, disembowels them, cuts them from neck to thigh and stuff like that, and they're all on the ground writhing and crawling.
And it's not even a battle. You know what I'm saying? He dispatches the rats so quickly that you would expect more from them from how ferocious their reputation is, but it walks right through all of them.
And Missile is the last one alive, and she doesn't back down. She charges right at him, and he cuts her down, and she's not quite dead as Ciri rides up. And she's like, "Missile!" He executes her right in front of Ciri. this part was tense where Ciri fights Bonhart, because we know Ciri is a much better fighter than any of the rats. So we know she's going to hold her own, right?
Yeah. Do you think when in the show, when Missile dies, they'll do that sweet pullback, zoom in Jaws thing, as she's dying? They will.
Maybe. Is that what you imagine in your head as you're?
Yeah, as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh no.
I think they could do a lot to improve the Ciri and Missile relationship in the show.
You think so?
Because we don't get a lot of detail there. At first, it's kind of creepy in the last book how.
Well, yeah, she kind of flip flops around in her feelings for her. I mean, as you would think a teenager would, but
yeah.
Towards the well, it's interesting because back when she's breaking up with Missile's kind of like, wow, you're actually being nice to me,
Yeah.
when she leaves. So I guess she did care for her.
I think it's nice having someone when you need somebody, but when you don't, just stay away, please.
Stay away from me, yeah, exactly.
Because we know Ciri, she's got complicated things going on in her head,
Yeah, definitely.
But they have an intense fight, and I think it even describes like the townsfolk just see blurs in the rain, with clanging from their swords, and she tries to remember this move that Lambert taught her. She performs a half pirouette, and Bonhart just clunks her in the head and knocks her down. He decides he doesn't want to kill her, that she's impressed him with her skills, and then he ties her to a post and saws off the rats' heads in front of her.
Yeah, and makes the villagers basically keep her eyes open the entire time.
Yeah, hold her eyes open as I do this. He's a real messed up dude.
Yeah, he's a real jerk. The whole sawing off the heads, that's a new one for me. I'd never really heard of that one before.
Yeah. He's
basically like, somebody go fetch me a saw. And I was like, oh no.
And basically he's staying in this town where everyone is terrified of him. He's just bossing everyone around who lives there.
Well, wouldn't you be?
Yeah, I'd be pretty scared. But again, like a crossbow, just shoot him in the back of the head or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's no one with a crossbow.
I love how these chapters or these moments end, and with Ciri telling Visigoda things like, if you were to witness them, it would be from outside. You would see two people talking over candlelight.
Yeah, that whole thing had me on edge every time I saw it, because I was expecting somebody to actually be there eventually.
Yeah, if you were there in the swamp looking through the window, you'd see two people sitting near candlelight talking, but there was no one there. And I was like, when will there be someone there?
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought too.
Now we cut to Dandelion, and I love this stuff because it's him narrating, because it's his memoirs as he's talking. And I love his bit about Geralt has become quite arrogant since his knighthood.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is true.
I thought it was really funny. And, as we last left off, Geralt was knighted by Maeve, but she plans on going in a different direction than they need to go. And he asked for her permission to leave, but she denies it, so they all sneak away, and now he's a deserter.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny how quickly the whole knighthood thing kind of
evaporated. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I love how they were like, basically they relieved the war effort of one donkey.
Yeah, and I love that they were there with that army because it served them, but now that they were going in the different direction, they're like, okay, this serves us no more, let's leave.
Yeah, and didn't they say that they like grabbed way too much stuff, but that's apparently what happens when you're stealing in the dark?
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love that group, just Geralt, Milva, Cahir, and we also get a quick, what's funny is the way these books happen is we'll get a quick aside with Triss Merigold. And she's in an inn, a woman's telling her they caught this witch in the nets. She had raven black hair. And we know they're talking about Yennefer. And she took her own life, being imprisoned or something. And as we're reading that, we're like, oh, that's not true. Come on.
Yeah. What if that's actually how Yennefer died? We just hear it from some lady in the town.
Yeah, I wrote here, the events on Thanedd happened 2 months earlier. Lots of BS about Yennefer that we don't believe.
Yeah, seriously.
So back to Dandelion. He's writing about his companions, and Geralt is, Cahir has proven himself when he fought the Nilfgaards on the bridge with Geralt, but Geralt still doesn't trust him. And Cahir's getting pretty sick of this. Like, come on, dude, what more do I have to do? And he can't get past the fact that Ciri was so haunted by him when she was younger, and she'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming. I forgot, what is Dandelion's original name for his book? It's like...
Was it 50 Years of Poetry?
Yeah, and Regis says, what about half a century? And he's like, ooh, I like that better.
Yeah.
There's this
I love the idea that he's writing it for, like, he's not 50 years old. He's like in his 30s, but he's writing it, for the future in mind.
And Geralt's laughing. He's like, you're 30 years old. Why are you writing it now? And he goes, when I'm 50, I won't have my wits about me. So it's better to write it now. And there's a part where Milva's talking about her father and how her father used to beat her till finally I forget what she did. She took a chair or something and beat him half to death. And she looks over and Dandelion's writing everything down. She goes, hey, stop writing that. He's like, ooh, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we also get a scene with Vaultier in a meeting with the Emir Var Emrys. And he's super pissed that it doesn't matter how big his army is. Nobody can find Ciri. Nobody can find Vilgefortz, nobody can find Rience, and nobody can find Cahir. And he's like, what the hell am I paying you people for? Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, he's talking about the amount of money they spend on the budget for them.
And basically he's gotten no results from any of this. And so as Vaultier's leaving after getting an ass reaming by the boss, he's approached by a projection of Rience, who proposes a deal that he will deliver. He knows where Cahir is. He will deliver his head in exchange for the whereabouts of Stefan Skellen and what he's planning. And there's this bit here where Vaultier relaxes with his mistress, Cantarella. And he talks about how she's beautiful, but she's a total airhead. But we learn that she's she's a spy for the sorceress. What is her name? Asir?
Ciri, I think. I could be wrong. That's one of the ones that escapes me.
So he's sleeping with a spy, which I think is hilarious. He has no idea.
Yeah, and he's just like spilling his guts about the whole thing. I love that idea.
It is funny. In the time of war, like, you can't trust anybody. So Geralt and the gang, or should I say his Hansa, as we learn later.
Yes. Definitely.
That term. They meet a beekeeper, and they ask about where they can find druids, and he's like, "Oh, the druids, they up and left." And they're like, every time they arrive somewhere, they find out that the druids aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I love how he talks about the druids aren't really nice. They'll put you in a wicker cage and burn you alive.
Yeah.
It made me think of the Wicker Man.
The
with
Wicker
Nicolas
Man,
Cage.
yeah, definitely.
How to get burned?
Which? Oh, the Nick Cage Wicker Man. Okay, I was going to ask you, which Wicker Man did it make you think of?
Yeah, how to get burned,
Yeah.
Later on, Nightingale, he'll be asking that. But, the druids aren't nice. They'll burn you alive in a wicker basket. And but he tells them that they're at the slopes of the Amel Mountains. And Geralt is pissed, and Geralt's like, okay, fine. And the group actually offers them a job for their migration south that, hey, we'll feed you 3 meals a day and all you got to do is protect us. And he's like, okay. And apparently it's really foggy there in the woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now here's a part where it was kind of confusing to me, but I understand it more now that I finished the book. And that is this trial with Joanna Selborn, or Kenna. She's testifying about her part in Stefan Skellen's actions for their hunt for Ciri. And when I was reading this, I was like, what is going on here? Why? What is this court trial?
Yeah, that was a little bit difficult for me as well.
Were you wondering what the hell was going on and why we were...
Yeah, I just wasn't quite sure. I mean, like I said, anytime there's so many characters in these books that anytime we get introduced to somebody a little bit new, it takes a little bit more for me to kind of let it sink in.
So much of this story is after the fact. I believe.
Yeah, it is. I was going to ask you about that. Like the telling of this, it almost seems like it's told through other people's perspective of what had happened before.
Ciri is telling Visigoda what happened to her. Joanna Selborn, she's telling the court what happened to her from her point of view. And then when we cut to Geralt, it's from Dandelion's point of view. And I almost feel like he's writing about it as it's happening. So is it happening right now, or we're just
I was kind of it was an interesting choice that Sapkowski made in. I guess none of that had ever happened in any of the other books, and I guess it's not that it hadn't happened at all in any of the other books, but no single book was told basically from the point of view of the past. And so I was kind of wondering what that was all about. I mean, even at one point, we jump way ahead in the future.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about when they find the old manuscripts in a cave?
Yes.
Next to two skeletons?
Which is interesting that he did that. I mean, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but that whole point, it's like, well, we know that there's this giant calamity that's supposed to happen that's going to change everything, but we do know that eventually things kind of right themselves. And, it's interesting.
I just remembered, was it in the last book, Baptism of Fire? There's a part where it cuts to a storyteller in a village telling a bunch of children the story of the Witcher and the Princess Cirilla, and he's telling the story of Geralt, basically. And we don't know what time period it is, but we do know he's talking about long ago, and it just happens for this little moment, couple of paragraphs, and then it cuts back to the story, and I'm like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, we get kind of the same thing with the people finding the manuscript, that you're just like, well, wait a minute, what? Is there something else going on in this story that we're just kind of not picking up on? That's kind of what I was wondering.
Well, another thing is, like, in the previous books, we've seen Dandelion, half a century of poetry before chapters. Like, it's been referenced before, so this book has been written. Like, between every chapter, there's a little bit of writing by some encyclopedia or something, some book of poetry.
Yeah, it's a quote.
Yeah, it's a quote. So it's like, this is all, everything we're reading happened long ago, of course. We understand that. But it's interesting how even in the stories we're reading, it's being told to us by somebody else. And I'm thinking, okay, Ciri and Visigoda, that's happening right now. And she's telling it. That's what I think. I think she's the only person that's in the present in the entire book, maybe. Everything else we're hearing about happened already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When they do this on the show, there will be much wailing and gnashing of teeth. I can just see it.
Yeah. What's funny is, like, people are like, will the next season be like that? I'm like, this shit happens through all the books, people. Just get used to it. And it's not that confusing, honestly.
It's really not, but if you had no prior knowledge of this whole thing, I could see how you would definitely be confused.
Right. So
for us, it's easier because we have so much, we're kind of knee deep in Witcher, that for us, it's easy to follow. But if it was your first experience with the books, or with the entire universe, I could see how you'd be confused.
In that first episode of The Witcher, it was, we've been reading the book, so I was like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyone else who's never read anything, they're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. Why are there so many blonde women that look kind of the same? Yeah.
Also, it's a little Stefan Skellen, also known as Tawny Owl. Give the dude one name because it's confusing.
Yeah, definitely.
Joanna Selborn or Kenna. No, just give us one name.
Yeah.
But she's telling the story of basically she was hired by Stefan Skellen because they heard that Leo Bonhart had killed the rats, but he didn't kill the one called Falca like he was supposed to. So Skellen put together a posse to go find Bonhart. That's basically what we learned there, and we'll learn more about that later. Ciri tells Visigoda that Bonhart made her disrobe in front of everyone to check to see if she had any more weapons or magically enhanced jewelry or something. He beat her and he put a leash on her. And at that point, she went into her strange melancholy state, like she did in the Time of Contempt, where, remember when the Nilfgaardians found her in the desert? She kind of just wasn't herself anymore. It's after she renounced Falca's power. She kind of went into the shell of her state. And she was like, I'm not here. Nothing can hurt me, is what she's telling herself. Which is basically what people do in real life. You kind of withdraw into yourself when you're in some kind of trauma. And it's really sad. I just hope Bonhart gets killed in a horrible way. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Stefan Skellen also had a similar deal with a baron. And that baron's men show up because they want to take Falca from Bonhart. And Bonhart's like, no, I think I'll be keeping her. And they're pissed. It's only 4 guys, and even one guy, he's got a crossbow. And Ciri's like, why doesn't he grab his crossbow and shoot Bonhart? And she realizes that they're all terrified of him. They're not going to attack him because they're all terrified of him. And she has to admit to herself, I'm terrified of him too.
Yeah, definitely.
And they kind of threaten him. They're like, well, we actually have 14 guys, we could show up here again. And he's like, you can all meet me later on, and then you can take her. And they're like, oh, okay. I think it's like Claremont or something like that. So there's this interesting part where he takes Ciri to a blacksmith, and they lay out a bunch of swords. Like, he sent a message ahead that he was coming there and he wanted to buy a sword. And I thought this part was cool. Like, the blacksmith has his own kind of like guards there, like armed guards. If anybody acts up, they'll come out and they'll, kill him. So even like Bonhart's not going to do anything much, I guess. And
but he's still afraid of Bonhart enough to not help Ciri.
Yeah.
Which it seems like he definitely wants to.
Well, he kind of talks about it. He goes, why is this girl on a leash? And he's like, that's none of your business. And he goes, no, it is. You're in my establishment. Take that leash off of her right now. And Bonhart reluctantly does. But after he kind of like grabs her and yanks her like really hard, and he like takes off the thing. And then as they're looking at different swords, he's like, here, let's try this one out. Here, kill me. And Ciri like tries to kill her, and he, disarms her quickly, and he kind of just laughs, and he's like, this is no good. It's not the proper weight. So the blacksmith, whose name I can't remember, and I didn't write down for some reason.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
He takes out a gnome-crafted sword. It's a light 250-year-old blade with an engraving of a tower and a swallow. And I was thinking, because of the name of the book, I was like, I think that's the one.
Yeah, that's a very good clue, Jason.
And the swallow is a symbol for hope. It's a priceless sword. And Ciri, it's a perfect for her body weight and everything. And the blacksmith, he gifts it to her.
Well, I'm just wondering how he came about it.
I don't know. I mean, years of weapons coming through here. Here's the thing, though. I think he gave it to her because he knew it was her destiny to eventually cut down Bonhart with this blade.
Yeah, exactly.
She may not be able to do it now, but she is going to kill him. And I know, like, part of me fantasizes about Geralt cutting him down to size, but I think it's Ciri who needs to kill Bonhart.
Yeah, I think she's earned that. I mean, in my head, I was thinking, that's what's going to happen too, is Geralt's going to kill him, because I like Geralt so much and I wanted him to have all the awesome battles, but I think definitely she's earned killing him.
Yeah, and besting him too. Just being a better swordsman than he is. So he takes her to this mansion with a bunch of rich assholes is the best way I can describe it.
Oh, man. The lady was so creepy.
Oh, I know. They're like sizing up Ciri, and she even doesn't she manhandle her or grab her?
Basically, yeah. Well, then she starts talking about how she'd like to do things with her husband, but her husband has genital warts, so he has to go easy or something. I'm like, oh man,
it's like whoa, TMI, lady.
Yeah,
and they force her to take some fist tech, but Ciri says it's way more potent than any she's ever had with the rats. It's like, whoa, dude, this is some strong stuff, man.
Yeah, this is how the rich get their fist tech.
She's basically tripping balls, right?
Yeah.
They take her to an amphitheater where it's basically a pit where they watch people fight.
Mm-hmm.
And did they say that they don't? It's not just humans fighting humans, but they'll fight like creatures and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
And or wolves.
Well, they keep talking about his dogs, how they were going to release his dogs into the ring, and they'll take care of everything if the people decide not to fight.
Right. So these people are, really terrible.
Yeah.
That same Baron's men arrive.
Did you get total Lionheart vibes from,
Yeah, I was thinking like a gladiatorial pit kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And those Baron's men arrive and they want Falca, but Bonhart, he basically taunts them like, hey, go get her, she's down there. And he throws her sword and it sticks in the sand. I think one guy's name is Embra. He's like, hey, what are you afraid of, a little girl or whatever? So I think one guy goes down there first. He is like, it's just a girl, I'll go get her. And he hops down there.
They raise like the reward on who can go get her. What was the name of the guy who was running this whole thing? Do you remember his name?
I can't remember. He's a count, right? Count or
yeah. And he's basically goading everybody and telling them, hey, if you can get her, I will raise the amount of money that one person gets if they can defeat her. And so they're like, well, it's just a girl, we could take her on.
Yeah, and they're even like, they want their fair share of the payment, like, hey, we need to get some of that cut too. So they go down there and she's just like warning them, like, she says, no one will touch me.
Mm-hmm.
And she defeats the men, and she can even kill one guy, but she resists doing it. And Bonhart's like, she could have killed him if she wanted to. And she goes on the offensive. She guts one, slashes one in the face, and the crowd is cheering. And that guy, Embra, he even says, well, can we at least remove our wounded?
Yeah.
And he tells Ciri that this is all you'll be, their amusement. And she realizes that he's right, so she takes her blade and she acts like she's going to kill herself for a second.
Uh-huh.
And Bonhart, she's like, she won't do it. And she doesn't do it. But he calls her a Witcher girl at that point. He realizes she fights like a Witcher. He knows who she is.
Yeah, he has so much knowledge about sword fighting that he, even to the point when she was getting outfitted for her sword, he knew the exact amount of weight that it was, that it needed to be in order to fit her properly. And so, yeah, he definitely knows something's up with her, the way she's been trained.
When Geralt and his hands arrive in Reedburn, Milva and Regis go for supplies, but Geralt and Dandelion are approached as they're searching for druids, asking people. And this prefect wants to talk to Geralt, and that's where he goes into this room and he's being interrogated. And I thought this part was pretty messed up because he brings in... This part really messes you up as you're reading it.
It does, definitely. It was kind of a dirty trick, almost.
Yeah, in walks Ciri, and Geralt can't believe his eyes. And you're like, what? Those people who caught her, now they're right there where Geralt is? But it's not. He just thinks he sees her for a moment. His mind is playing tricks on him. And how do you say this character's name? How did they say it in the book?
Gosh, I don't know.
It looks like Angoulême to me.
Angoulême, that's what it was, yeah.
Okay. He brings in Angoulême, and she's kind of a sassy, and he keeps smacking her in the face, and Geralt's like, please stop doing that.
Yeah.
Please stop hitting her, because all he sees is Ciri when he looks at her. And she's hilarious the way she talks and everything, but they're going to put her to death for being in this gang, and everything that they run there in this place is by example. So if you're a gang, you commit a crime, they kill you in front of everybody, so it'll deter other people from doing it. They hang you, right?
Yeah, I just loved her whole attitude the whole time, and I love how they were like, well, she's still gonna die, we're just gonna not torture her if she lets us know.
I also love how she calls Milva auntie.
Yeah, and nuncle. Is that how they were saying it?
Yeah, uncle and auntie, and she's like, stop calling me that. At one point, she smacks her and makes Angoulême start crying, and then finally she caresses her. She's like, I'm sorry. She feels bad.
Yeah. Well, I love how she eventually is like, Milva tries to tell her to do something and she won't do it. And she's like, well, Geralt's the only one who can order me around because he's the one who actually saved me.
Right. She feels like this closeness to Geralt because basically he says that Angoulême, she came there and she has some information, which is her gang, this guy named Nightingale, has been hired to find the Witcher and kill him. And aren't you interested in that, Geralt? And he's like, well, yeah, I am. So the prefect doesn't want this element there, so he wants Geralt to find Nightingale and kill him. And he says, yeah, I'll do it, but I want the girl too, Angoulême. And he's like, fine. So he takes her. He goes and he talks to them, Regis, about who could be setting these traps. Who's guilty of hiring someone to kill Geralt? And the first thing is he's like, Maeve, because she's pissed you're a deserter. No, she probably doesn't even know, or she doesn't have time to deal with that right now. Dijkstra? Yeah. No, Dijkstra would want to do something like that himself. He wouldn't hire someone to kill him. So they decide to go after Nightingale, and because he wants to know who hired him. I think at that point I'm like, it's Vilgefortz. It's Vilgefortz. It's Vilgefortz. Yeah. Why don't you know that?
Yeah, exactly. It's so obvious.
Cahir, Dandelion, and Regis will go to Toussaint, and Geralt accuses Cahir of being a traitor. He doesn't want him to go with them, and they get in this great fight where they're like punching each other. And this whole time, Geralt's knee has been bothering him for several books now. Ever since the fight on Thanedd with Vilgefortz, his knee has not been the same. And Cahir gets the best of him. And finally, Milva gets tired of seeing this, and she takes a belt and she just starts slapping, whapping them with the belt. And I think at that point, Angoulême says something about, calls her auntie, and she smacks her with it.
Starts smacking her with the belt, yeah.
Finally, Geralt apologizes to Cahir. Nightingale said that there's a Witcher. He's traveling with 4. And Geralt realizes, wait, I'm traveling with 5. Why did he think 4? And Regis says, well, I'm a higher vampire. I can't be detected by magic. So it's a mage spying on them.
Yeah.
And Geralt makes me mad here.
Yeah, he immediately jumps to Yennefer.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Yennefer, she's working with Vilgefortz. I can't believe she would do that. And I'm like, you asshole, no, she's not.
Yeah, no, he just immediately jumped. I mean, what was his reasoning again? I forgot his reasoning. Was it because they needed to know him very well or know the party in order for her to detect it? I forget what that was.
I don't know. The reason I think he believes is I think Dijkstra put this in his head on Thanedd, where he was like, I know it's find Yennefer. And he goes, oh, if you don't think she's in on this, you're crazy, man. And yeah. I think that's been in his head ever since. But Yennefer is an innocent party. She was shrunk down to a tiny statue.
Yeah.
And as soon as she found out Ciri was in danger, she escaped and has been looking for her ever since. But everyone thinks that she is working with Vilgefortz, and she's not. So I just want to slap Geralt for that. Now, what's interesting is Ciri tells Visigoda that she dreamt about this whole conversation, and she badly wants to tell Geralt that he's wrong about blaming Yennefer. And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, yeah, right, Ciri? It's such a dumb idea he's got in his head that even Ciri senses it,
Yeah. Is this the point where he thinks that Ciri's dead?
Yeah, he does think she's pretty much dead by now.
Yeah, I loved his whole speech about how, what they were going to do is basically rain vengeance upon everybody.
Yeah. There's this, I want to mention this now just because I'll forget it later, where Yennefer is talking about, someone brings up Geralt to Yennefer, and she goes, oh, please, he's useless. He wanders from one place to the next, he gets dragged into little ordeals, and he loses focus of what he was, why he was there in the first place.
He's not going to help her.
Yeah, he gets sidetracked. And I was just like, oh my god, she's totally right.
Exactly. He's a total badass. But yeah, he is prone to distraction.
He gets distracted everywhere he goes. So Geralt, Cahir, and Angoulême find this dwarf, Drozdek. He's working in a mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she asks about this half-elf, and, he's like, oh, you shouldn't be here. He wants to kill you or whatever. And Geralt kind of roughs him up a bit. And
yeah, he's surprised to see Angoulême because he expected her basically to be dead.
Right. And when they show up to the Rialto pit, and these men immediately recognize Angoulême, and she's like, "Take us to Nightingale. We've killed the Witcher." And they're like, "Oh, really?" And finally, they're acting kind of sketchy, so they kill them all. And that's when this tall half elf approaches them, and he's like, "Oh, I heard you killed the Witcher. Come with me." And
I loved how he basically, wanted proof, and so Geralt gave him his medallion.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, don't give it to that guy. This isn't going to end well.
By the way, he never gets his medallion back.
No, he doesn't. It's awful.
The half-elf grabs Angoulême, and they have a standoff. Knights arrive, and Geralt's like, "Oh, we got, help here. Distraction." But no, frog-faced Nightingale. That's how they describe him. He looks like a frog. The half-elf is Shiryu. Yeah. Nightingale is a frog-faced dude. And he wants to make an example out of Angoulême. Doesn't everybody want to make an example out of her? The prefect does, and now these guys. So the half-elf Shiryu says, "Actually, I know you, Witcher, or you know me." And he's like, "Whoa, what are you on about?" And he's like, "Coderinger and Fen, I was the one who killed them." And I was like, "You bastard!"
I like them.
I loved Coderinger.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So luckily, some explosions happen, and some freedom fighters are attacking. And arrows are hitting the soldiers. Angoulême kills her captors with a knife. Geralt grabs a sword, starts killing Nightingale's men. But Cahir, he gets hit in the head with a hatchet, and it describes him as being scalped, where you see his hair flapping on the side of his head.
Yeah, that was very gross.
That's not good. Geralt is kind of in a rage, and he just wants to find Shiryu and kill him. But more explosions happen, and he kind of snaps him out of it, and they get away. They decide to ride for Toussaint. And Geralt's horse dies of exhaustion because they've been riding so hard.
He's got to carry both of them, right?
Yeah, so he says, "I'll stay here with Cahir, and we'll hide, and you go warn Dandelion. And right ahead, tell them everything that's happened." So Cahir and Geralt walk until Cahir can't anymore. Geralt carries Cahir until his knees killing him, and then they hide in a cave.
And this is where they totally bro down, right?
Yeah, he's just like, he realizes that he does like Cahir.
Yeah.
And then
they kind of make amends in this time, which is nice because the guy's got half of the skin on his scalp flapped over. So it's good that you're not, that you're taking care of him now.
I understand where Cahir is coming from. He's like, "Dude, how do I prove myself to you, man?"
Yeah.
And so he kind of mentions, he talks about it more later, but he talks about him having a connection to Ciri, that he has visions of her. And
and Geralt's kind of like, what?
Yeah, like, what? So the next day, it's daytime, and they catch some fish, and Cahir tells Geralt that when he was a young officer, he was just trying to prove himself. And he says he had a small squad, and his only mission was to retrieve Ciri from Sintra. When he found her, he took her out of the city, but he had reservations about taking her to Nilfgaard, like harming this young girl. He didn't know what the intentions were, what they were going to do with her. He truly meant her no harm. He passed out from exhaustion, and when he woke up, she was gone. When Nilfgaard found out he failed his mission, he was imprisoned. Then a year later, Emir let him go with the mission of going to Thaned to retrieve Ciri. And then we know what happened there.
I'm just kind of wondering what they are going to do in the show about that, because he definitely seems very evil in the show compared to how he's described in this in this section.
There's a very cult-like religious thing going on with the Nilfgaardians in the show that we have not seen in the books.
Yeah, not really. It's kind of mentioned a little bit, I think, but nothing quite played up so much.
Yeah, and I can understand that because a lot of what happens in the books happens in the distance. Like the Nilfgaard stuff, there's a lot you could just fill in because we don't see it happen.
Yeah.
You know, their motivations and everything. So he says that he has dreamt about Ciri as an adult. Like, he sees her as grown. She's not a little girl anymore, and he thinks he's in love with her. And as I read this part, I went, what? What?
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, I don't picture him as being very young. When I read this, I picture him kind of almost in his late 20s. So when that happened, I'm like, oh, you too, huh? Oh, okay.
And Geralt's kind of like, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, we're going to table this discussion.
Yeah, we got stuff to do, and I'm going to just pretend he didn't say that.
Don't you feel like he just kind of miraculously recovered also from basically being scalped? It was like, oh, he's a very strong guy. He got over it really quickly. Yeah, I was like, oh, well, that's nice.
Dude, bobby pins, just pin it back. You're good.
Yeah.
Does your scalp reattach itself, or?
You know, what would have been great to have at that point was a barber surgeon. I don't understand why Geralt needed them to leave. It seems like Regis is the type of person that you want to keep around all the time.
You know? Yeah, exactly. In fact, Regis is waiting for them, and he said, Angoulême told me everything. They've crossed into Toussaint. And as soon as they did, her pursuers gave up. And they're looking for a druid named Flaminica.
Flaminica is how he pronounced it.
Flaminica. Okay, so here's what it is. I'm trying to remember the scene. Regis says there's someone in a cave that wants to talk to Geralt, right?
Yeah.
And he must go unarmed. This totally reminded me of Luke going to the cave on
Yes, definitely. Me too.
So Geralt does so reluctantly. He has no idea what's in there. And this scene was really bizarre and very interesting.
It was.
When he first enters the cave, there are bones everywhere. So it's like, okay, many people have died here or been dragged in here. And then he starts hearing voices of creatures and little things trying to bite him on the feet and the legs. And they're like, Witcher! What are they saying? Like, you're not welcome.
Stupid Witcher.
Yes, stupid Witcher. I think it's hilarious that they talk. I haven't heard Peter Kenny's part when he in this part.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, this whole part was awesome. The different voices that he did. Yeah, it was very ominous and weird. And I love how the idea that he was like, they basically weren't used to talking to humans, so you could tell it was coming from a voice that wasn't used to talking. Or from a throat that wasn't used to talking.
And that they all know he's a Witcher as soon as they see him, and they don't like him.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, they're calling him a murderer and everything.
And I love there's a little one who keeps, like, biting at his foot, and finally he's just, like, kicks at it. And they're like, oh, he kicked him. Did you see he kicked him?
Yeah, exactly.
And this thing called a knocker comes out of the darkness, and he punches Geralt.
I love that we got the description also about the knocker before, how it could basically be bribed away with like strong brandy or something like that.
Yeah, he said it smelled of vodka.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And Geralt assumes like, okay, this is how I die, right?
Yeah.
And they're all like getting all worked up, all the creatures in the dark, until they hear a voice telling them to stop and let him through. And that's where we meet an elf named Avallac'h. And I thought this part was very descriptive and really interesting.
It was interesting, yeah.
He's painting a purple bison on the wall, like cave painting. And it even looks, Geralt makes the point of like, this looks like an ancient painting on the wall that he's doing. And he explains that when humans see this stuff, they're fascinated by it, and they are like, we need to preserve this. And that's how they hide their elven things behind it.
Yeah, it's basically a giant magical door, right?
Right. So all of their ancient kind of art and statues and all this stuff is hidden back there, and it's preserved because us dumb humans are like, ooh, look at this painting. We can't ever let anything happen to this.
Yeah.
Which makes me think, is that really what it is?
That's what's really going on, yeah.
Yeah.
Those caves in France. Yeah. We got to get over there with a jackhammer, Jason.
Yeah. No, you don't understand. There's elven art back here.
Yeah, it's all just a cover up.
So when he reveals what he's hiding to Geralt, like even Geralt is like, whoa, like he's in awe. It kind of talks like these elves kind of frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows him this one statue of a woman. He says, this is Laura Doran, a human elf that birthed a half-human child. And Ciri is related to her. This is the elder blood, right?
Yeah.
And I love that he keeps talking about prophecy. And even now, Geralt's like, I don't really believe in that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And
it's interesting also the way he talks about even his party in the prophecy. And I immediately believed him. You know, he was saying that you're basically going to lose everybody who's in your party. And, you know, I don't want to believe that at all.
Neither do I.
And so hopefully Geralt's right that this guy is kind of full of crap, but
well, he even says,
it really
in fact,
makes me scared.
He says, in fact, one of them may be dying right now. There's one point where he gives Geralt these crystals that he reluctantly, because he wants to show him something, but he doesn't see Ciri. He sees that his friends are in danger, and he's like, I've got to go. And he's trying to tell him how important Ciri's destiny is. But, you know, Geralt doesn't believe in that bullshit. Like, basically, he's saying, yeah, that may be your destiny, but that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It doesn't mean we have to follow destiny. Give me a break with this crap. And I'm wondering, like, there's a reason we're following Geralt through all of these stories. And is it because he's going to learn that destiny's real, or we're going to learn that Geralt's right, that it's a bunch of bullshit? Nothing can define what you're meant to be. Only you can.
Yeah, I don't really know where it's going. I mean, like I've said, every time I've had some sort of preconceived notion as to where this is going, it's usually wrong. So I'm not even going to attempt to guess. I mean, it was very ominous though, because we've kind of fallen in love with these characters and don't want any irreparable harm to come to them. But now I'm just kind of like, okay, well, when's the first one going to die?
Yes.
Basically.
Just protect my dandelion.
Yeah, exactly. He's so delicate. Please don't hurt him.
Well, he when he senses they're in danger, Avalak summons a knocker, and it's the same one that punched him. He said, only a knocker could get there in time. Your horse couldn't get there. I loved the bit where he's riding on the knocker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And when
it made me feel like at the end of the Neverending Story when Sebastian takes off on Falcor. I was, he's all excited. Even though this time Geralt was actually terrified.
The knocker reeks of vodka.
Yeah.
And he
actually turns out to be a pretty awesome guy.
Yeah, the knocker's like super fast, and Geralt is just holding on for dear life. And they arrive on the edge of Mirkfid. And the knocker tells Geralt that the mist that they see before them isn't a natural mist. And he also apologizes for punching him in the face. You know?
Yeah. Pretty sweet dude, actually.
Like, you know what? You're all right, Witcher. You're all right.
Yeah.
What's funny is sometimes when when you and I are in the act of reading the books and we haven't talked to each other for a while, sometimes I'll just send you a quote of something, and I sent you "Pawn my word," and I don't know if you knew what the hell I meant by that.
No, I kind of forgot about that. It didn't stand out to me.
Well, when Geralt reaches the pilgrims, the people they were with, they're dead.
Yeah.
And Geralt approaches and starts cutting down bandits. Like, one of them's playing a fiddle, and he sneaks up on them and he kills them. And there are even more bandits, and he finds an armored knight.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
The red checkered knight. And he keeps saying, "Upon my word."
That's
and I'm like,
right. I forgot about that.
And I was like, does that mean upon my word? Like, what the hell is this?
I believe so. And he can't get his helmet off, right?
Yeah, they have him on the ground, and they're just pounding on his shield, and Geralt comes up and he rescues him, basically. And the knight introduces himself as the Checkered Knight.
Yeah.
And so they join forces, and they're, like, killing off bandits. And they see where all the smoke is coming from, and it's a small settlement being burned to the ground. And I write here, the Red Checker Knight repeatedly says, "Pawn my word." Geralt faces down the bandits, and a crossbow bolt catches Geralt in the ear. And the Witcher cuts him down. Later, when Milva finds him, she says, "Your ear is gone."
Yeah, that's right.
Did an earlobe get cut off, or is his whole freaking ear gone?
Yeah, so now he's minus one ear and has got a bum knee. Ciri better be worth it, you know?
Yeah, and I was thinking, he's got long hair. It could cover up that missing ear there, right?
Yeah, he'll grow it back.
Oh, yeah, they have mages and stuff. Yennefer could grow him a new ear.
Yeah, she'll grow him a new ear. It's fine.
So there's a part where a bandit approaches Geralt, and Geralt makes note of his stance and his movement. And he's like, "This guy is good with a sword, and my knee's killing me. I don't know if I can actually defeat this guy." And the bandit sneezes, and that's when Geralt cuts him down. He finds his opening as the guy's like, "Achoo!" I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was. Very random.
I was glad the bandit had allergies.
That's true, yeah. He must have been allergic to the knocker.
So this cavalry of knights arrive. They think Milva and Geralt are bandits, but he's like, no. And then the Checker Knight says, "He is a man of honor." And I love, they're like, "Who are you?" And he's just like, "I don't like to tell anyone. I'm kind of like," I forget what he says exactly, but it's pretty funny.
He says he's a knight errant, right?
Yeah, knight errant, and I have no coat of arms or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, okay." So the knights are friendly, and Angoulême and Dandelion show up, and the knights remember Dandelion, known as the Viscount Julian. And they tell him that Duchess Henrietta would be delighted to see him, but he's like, "Oh, no.
Yeah, he starts freaking out.
The Duke, he wanted me dead last time he saw me." And they're like, "The Duke has died, and it's just Duchess Henrietta now." And he's like, "Really?"
Well, yeah, it was so funny because he was basically panicked before he finds out, because he knows it's like certain death for him. But then once he finds out he's dead, he's like, "Oh, great."
So Dandelion wants to head back to Beauclair Palace, where it'll be safe for them. But Geralt and Angoulême, they want to go after Nightingale and Shirou, because wouldn't you want to kill those guys?
Yeah, definitely.
This time, Milva goes with them. And it's funny, as they're riding towards the direction, a bandit comes running at them, and they're ready to fight him, but he doesn't even look at him. He runs past them. And all of a sudden, the ground starts shaking, and they're like, "What the hell's going on?" And a giant tree is attacking, and their horses kick them off because they're so scared, and their horses run away, and they're just kind of standing there, and Geralt's like, "Run!" But it's too late, because it scoops them up in its roots, and it's also holding other bandits. Like, it's got all sorts of other people, like, in its roots too. And the tree is so fast, it's kind of unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
And
it starts squeezing them to death, right?
Yeah, Geralt, for the first time ever, is terrified. And Angoulême has soiled herself. And,
yeah.
And Milva is passed out. So when they reach the village, Geralt sees a wicker cage, and there are people inside of it. In fact, Nightingale and Shirou are in there. And he's like, "Oh, they're going to set them on fire. They really are going to set them on fire." And I think even the druids say that we would never do that, but everyone expects us to, so we're going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we're just going to give everybody what they want.
Yeah. And so he starts calling out for Flaminica, and he says he's a friend of Regis, and so they set them free. The tree releases them. He needs to help Milva, and the druid says, "We're going to set them on fire," but he's like, please don't. I need to talk to these men. And they're like, "I'm sorry, but this is just the way it has to be." So they set them on fire, and Shirou and Nightingale, they weren't nice guys.
Well, and Geralt is basically begging them to not do it. At least let him interrogate them. And they're like, "Nope, sorry. We're going to burn him."
And Geralt realizes, my medallion was in there, but it doesn't matter anymore because I'm no longer a Witcher.
Yeah, that made me, I felt sad about that, And I know that this is his destiny, and this, he's not going to be a Witcher anymore. And maybe he'll end up going back to it or whatever, but the loss of the medallion really did seem like a break from the past.
Yeah, a part of his life is over, because I guess he hasn't been a Witcher for a while now.
But I was always expecting, and I'm sure it still could happen with, all of the Witchers at Kaer Morhen coming and helping him, but maybe we're not even going to get that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm wondering what happened to those guys, what they're up to.
Remember we were talking about Ard all over the battlefield and everything like that?
Yeah.
I still want that scene.
Because, a Witcher is supposed to be neutral and not partaking in any of this, and he's totally not neutral anymore. He's getting involved in all sorts of... So now we come upon what I like to call the Cahir chapter. Dijkstra is visiting, and I was like, okay, what is going on here? Okay, let me break it down, because it took me a while to realize what's going on. Okay, Dijkstra is visiting King Tyson and his wife, okay? He's essentially there to ask for money for the war effort, because right now they're in a nice truce with Nilfgaard. Redania is, right? Mm-hmm. But they know that Nilfgaard, it's only a matter of time before they're like, hey, actually, we're taking over,
Yeah.
So they want to be able to get more men, and they want to be able to battle Nilfgaard and fight them off. And there's kind of a little history here about Cahir. Cahir is like a neutral kingdom. They're a rich mining kingdom contributing to lands of gold, salt, and glass. And they talk about the history of King Radivir tried to tax them, and they were like, no, I don't think so. And then Redania...
Well, I like how he basically thought it was this tiny little village, and it turns out it was a giant city.
Yeah, and Redania and Cadwyn came there in force, but Cahir fought them off because the way that they pay their soldiers is their soldiers are rich, basically, and they're fighting for their own land and everything they own. So they came out in droves and they defeated them. And so ever since then, Cahir has had an agreement. They don't give them taxes, right? They don't pay Redania tax.
Oh, no, they don't. Well, and he was saying, we've never had your help on anything, and yet now you think that we need to be your vassal. And they're like, no.
Yeah, and so he pretty much turns Dijkstra down at first, but then afterwards he's like, Well,
and I think that was the difficulty of this book, of this chapter, in that it was hard to follow. It's told from several different points of view.
Right.
It's told from Dijkstra's point of view and from the king's point of view, and then the king's grandson way in the future playing on the floor, his point of view. It was definitely a little hard to follow. I could see why it took so long to get through.
Well, that's an interesting thing also. King Tyson's wife, Tyson gets information from Valtier's mistress, Cantarella, from the Nilfgaardian sorceress, Asir. So that's where she's delivering their message to, because they know what's going on. And Tyson keeps having dreams about Ciri marrying Tancred, his son, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually been implanted in his head to have those dreams by his wife. And so, is everybody manipulating everybody here?
I really think so, yeah. It's, and the wife is doing, it turns out that the son is basically, he's kind of an idiot. Yeah. Really. He's out there, he's kind of outpouring and getting drunk and just living the good life, basically, and has no concern about being king, really. But she, like I said, there's a lot going on.
And Tyson basically says that they will fund them. They will give them the money in secret. It'll look like it didn't come from them, though.
Yeah, but that came after we get the whole part about her talking and him getting wisdom from the good book or whatever. Yeah.
And doesn't he tells Dijkstra that he genuinely likes him, but watch out, one day an assassin will come for you or something?
Well, yeah, he really respects him. He even says, I like you because you're a whoreson, but you're a genuine whoreson, and I know that you're doing all this stuff not out of your personal gain, and you're killing your reputation in doing so, but you don't really care. You're looking after the the whole thing. But you do kind of want to step it back a little bit in terms of the amount of torture you're inflicting on people, because you're going to get you're getting a horrible reputation, and they're going to eventually take it out on you.
That is true. Yeah, I remember that. So after that, these books, they really make us wait for some Yennefer information, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
The last book, it was like 3/4 of a way in the book before we got Yennefer.
Well, I remember you even texted me in this one. You're like, is Yennefer even in this book?
Yeah. I mean, I really wondered that. And finally we find her in Skellig.
You're like, maybe she is dead.
Yeah. I mean, ever since, I forget which book it was it Time of Contempt, they set up that Kraken Crate, or as I like to call him, Kraken Crate.
Kraken Crate, yeah.
He swore to Calanthe that he would never fail her again after her daughter died, and that he'd always be there for her or Ciri. He made a pledge. So I was like, oh, okay, he's going to come into the story later on. He's going to help him somehow. So Yennefer's there ready to cash in that promise. And as soon as he sees her, he's like, oh, no. I've heard all about you, turncoat, working with Vilgefortz and the Mage Rebellions on Thanedd. I thought it was cool that they called it that, the Mage Rebellions.
Yeah.
And first he says, I'm going to turn you over to Novigrad as soon as I can and be rid of you. And she's like, no, you're going to listen to me. First of all, I'm here to help Ciri, and you promised you would help her, and so you're going to help me. And he's just like,
well, I love how he broke it down about what he was going to do and how she was captured, and they were going to shoot, they don't have any mages anymore, but he's got the best archers like ready to shoot her at any time. And she's like, I'm not getting on that boat. And he's like, oh, you're not? He's just like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And then she invokes the oath that he did. It was awesome.
And he's just like, oh, okay.
I guess you're not going anywhere.
Well, how can I help?
And it's funny because he's so stern with her and harsh with her at first, and then once it turns out that she invokes the oath, now he's basically trying to get into her pants.
Yeah, he's like, apparently they had a moment in the past.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's
and he initially says, he's like, we're going to let bygones be bygones. And then she keeps having to use his same line over and over again on him.
Yeah. She's like, that's not happening, dude. And I like that he's like, they have all this incredible seafood there, but she's like, no, I'll take a steak. So,
yeah.
You don't eat lobster? Come on. I love the part where he talks about he remembers Ciri as being a strange child. She was really competitive with the boys. Mm-hmm. And in fact, his son once hurt himself competing with Ciri. And Ciri helped read to him as he was mending back to health. And in fact, Ciri and his son, was his name Hjalmar or something?
Yeah, I think it was Hjalmar.
They had a flirtation when they were young, and they kind of said that they wanted to marry. And of course, Calanthe, when she heard that, she was like, "Keep that boy away from my granddaughter."
I almost want to keep a running tally of who has people more smitten with them, if it's Ciri or Geralt.
Yes,
because it seems like there are just as many people wanting to marry Ciri as there are, wanting to be with Geralt.
Yeah, and those same people all are quick to believe Yennefer is a turncoat,
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's just because of her attitude, the way she comes off. They're like, oh yeah, I can see it. She's evil.
Yeah, she does seem evil, but she's not. But even to me, when we found out the whole thing with Vilgefortz in the last book, even I was like, well, is she doing this? Because there is something definitely untrustworthy about Yennefer.
Remember what I said? I was like, no way.
Yeah, you're right. You called it.
Because she thinks, I truly do think she thinks of Ciri as her daughter.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was kind of it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me that she would do that either. But I said, usually what I think about in these books is wrong. So, I can't really trust my judgment.
Well, what's interesting is Yen needs a massive diamond because she wants to construct a telecommunication device. She wants to build a smartphone.
She does.
Or
with FaceTime.
Satellite conference. So they sail to Hinder's Fall, to the Temple of Modron, Freya, or something. I've written these things down. Priestess.
I think it was Mudrin Freya.
Mudrin Freya, okay. Priestess Sigdrifa.
That's good. You got it.
She meets with Yennefer at the statue of Modron Freya. And the statue has a giant diamond. And, Yennefer's like, ooh, I need that. And they're like, you're not getting that. That's who we pray to,
Yeah, well, I liked how the priestess was definitely on Yennefer's side. She really admired her because of what Yennefer had done on the dock for a pregnant woman, even after she had been hit in the head with an oar.
Yeah, she saw the woman was in labor, and Yennefer, without thinking, went to help her and calm her. And she says that she remembered Ciri, and she... I guess she liked her, and she wants Yen to join her in prayer. And I think she's like, no.
No thanks.
She's like, no, I need you to join me in prayer. And she goes into this kind of neat trance thing where at first I was like, is she communicating with the statue or the woman? I was kind of confused there. But I guess with whoever they pray to. She was communicating with the priestess, right?
Yeah.
The priestess wants to know who Yennefer is and who she is deep down, like in her heart.
I don't know if that was the priestess. I think it was she thought she was having a hallucination of the
statue,
the goddess.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I think Yennefer is a better person than even Yennefer realizes. I think what this was all about. Yennefer thinks of herself a certain way, but I think this kind of looked into her and saw that you're willing to do the right thing. You want to help Ciri out of love, and everybody else wants Ciri for other reasons, and it doesn't have anything to do with love. It's manipulating her and using her for power, etc. And Yennefer's intentions are good.
Yeah, we get the first glimpse into Yennefer's past before she became a wizard, too.
Yeah, of her horrible upbringing, her father.
Yeah, her dad, who deserved to die.
You know what's funny is I read that before I saw on the show. I think it's neat because so much of Yennefer's backstory is just kind of hinted at. And I think it's neat for a show to actually get to show us stuff that is just barely hinted at,
Yeah, I agree.
So she awakens and the jewel is sitting at her feet, the statue's feet, right? And it's like, hey, I can use it.
Well, yeah, because before she was just wanting to take it, and they were like, no, you can't take it. It's like part of the statue. And then it just ends up being on the ground after she talks to the goddess.
So that means she can have it. She constructs the lab and stuff, so we know time is passing here. And she's talking with Crack about Crack and Crate. She talks with him about the Sedna Abyss and how Pavetta died and how he's always been suspicious of that and how it wasn't natural circumstances. And I was like, ooh, this is interesting because we've always thought it was a little sketchy, just hearing that Ciri's parents died in a shipwreck, like, okay, like, give me some proof here. But it turns out it was this mysterious Sedna Abyss where their bodies were never found? Come on!
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost like our Bermuda Triangle, right? It's just a place that people avoid because ships go down all the time there.
And then we get this kind of, and I write, Crack makes a few passes at Yen, and he's turned
He should turn the corner on their relationship, right?
Yeah, and this is a different timeline because Triss Marigold shows up after the fact, asking about Yen, hearing.
Well, how long do you think Yennefer was on there then?
I don't know, but a while, because I think since we know what happens to her ship later, and we'll get to that, but Triss shows up talking to Crack and Crate, and she asks what happened to Yen, and she assumes that Vilgefortz has Ciri. And some people assume Ciri was dead, like Geralt, but she thinks that Vilgefortz has her. These people don't know shit, do they?
No, they don't. They really don't. For people so cocky and they're know-it-alls, they don't know anything.
So cut back to present is what I think it is. Ciri and Visigoda are fishing for eels. And they're talking about the two teleportation towers. The Tower of the Gulls, which she went through on Thaned, and then the Tower of Swallows, or Ziriel. Some claim that it didn't exist. It was at the land of the 100 lakes. Visigoda theorized that if Ciri went through the Tower of Swallows, it would take her back to Thanedd. Visigoda opens up an old scroll and that references Avalak in the Land of 100 Lakes, which I thought was very cool, that it referenced the same elf that we've met. On Skellig...
You know what? I actually, as you're bringing it up, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth. Wow, okay. That kind of...
apparently, Avalak is really old.
Yeah.
If there's like an old ancient scroll mentioning him.
Definitely. Yeah, I didn't even really pick up on that.
On Skellig again takes 2 longships, and she asks for volunteers. And I believe, is Kraken Crate's son okay? Because I think he goes, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does go.
And there's no more mention of him, I don't think.
Well, I thought it mentioned that she was, at one point she asked for volunteers from guys that she knew that were basically going to die. And he wanted to volunteer, but she wouldn't let him.
Yeah, okay. So first she thinks she may not make it back from this trip to the Sedna Abyss. So she messages Triss and Philippa, who are in bed together. What?
What
is going on? Come on, Triss. What?
She's just lonely.
I'm experimenting, you know? It's like, come on, Philippa, really? Because Philippa really pisses me off here because...
She does, yeah.
She really wants her name cleared because she wants to know, like, if she dies, she wants Geralt and Ciri to know that she was not a traitor. Yeah. And Philippa's like, I'm sorry, it fits the narrative better for us if you are a traitor, so no.
Yeah, awful.
And she's like, their sisterhood of mages, they want Ciri for their own gain, just like everybody else wants Ciri for their own gain. And Triss is just kind of like sitting there, kind of like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Triss,
she's like, please forgive me.
Like, pick a better side, Triss.
I know.
Anyway, we know that Philippa sucks after that.
She does, yeah.
Cut to Kraken Crate, and one longship returned, but the other one didn't. In fact, it describes their ship. They hit a great storm, a magnificent storm. The ship was lifted from the sea, and it vanished into a black cloud. If I was Kraken Crate, I would have been like, yeah, you're making that up.
Yeah, definitely.
So as the last we see of Kraken Crate, he's contemplating a rescue mission. So I'm thinking breadcrumbs for next book, maybe?
Yeah, probably. Oh, we didn't mention the point of before when Kraken Crate was talking to Yennefer about how he knew that Ciri was not dead because of the sea. Like, apparently every time one of the ladies from the Elder Blood died, the sea would throw this horrible storm, and how that had never happened. I like that part.
When Pavetta died, it was like hell on earth in the waters there, right? It was like this great storm. And so when Ciri supposedly dies, just like, no, she didn't, because nothing happened here, and they would have. So, back to Joanna Selborn, also known as Kenna. And she's now back in her cell. And it's kind of funny. It kind of talks about her and her sister kind of beat up on this guy who's their cellmate.
Yeah.
This poor guy. And he sleeps with a chair to fight them off if he has to, which is pretty funny. And she recalls the time that she approached Stefan Skellen and told him that they had a spy in their midst. And he's like, oh? And she's like, he's invisible. And they gave this spy the pancake treatment. I thought this part was hilarious. So basically they're like, okay, hold. Okay, let's start talking in the room. And now! And they throw like pancake batter or powder or flour. And he's just like, oh, the jig is up. They found him. And it turns out it's Rience. A guy.
He's back.
We haven't seen Rience since the time of Contempt. Am I right?
No, we haven't.
Well,
and he was such a big, ominous, awful character in those. And now he's just kind of this sniveling, awful, kind of just pathetic person now.
Right. I forgot we saw him earlier in this book as a
little bit,
basically. A projection. But what's funny is he's basically got Vilgefortz on his cell phone in his pocket. He's got him on speakerphone in his pocket.
He does.
which I think is hilarious. And they're going to torture him by burning his feet with a hot poker. And I was like, dude, man, I don't want to see this. Yeah. And Joanna's trying to read his mind. And just as it's about to reveal something, Bonhart is approaching with Ciri. So it cuts to Ciri back at Visigoda's, and she's rummaging through his old clothes because she's planning on leaving. And Visigoda has arrived from the town, and he says that he thinks her pursuers are close, and he tells her about these 4 men that are basically harassing the town, and they've even killed people living there. And she's like, they sound like monsters, perfect for a Witcher girl, right? And she basically says she wants to go there and rid them of monsters. And Visigoda's pleading with her not to, and they kind of get in an argument here about, like, she wants...
Yeah, it gets really heated and nasty.
Yeah, she wants blood. He just wants to sit there like a scaredy cat. I'm not being that harsh saying that, but... Yeah, they're like a coward in a swamp for the rest of his life. He sat there doing nothing, not participating in life, basically. She basically calls him a big loser, and she doesn't really mean that. So Bonhart drags Ciri to Skellen, and Rience is now freed, and they have a private meeting where he realized the reason he didn't turn Ciri in or kill her is because he realized her worth. Like, he's like, I could get a lot for this girl, right? She's a fierce fighter. She's important to people. So he wants some retirement money, man. Rience pulls out a silver box where we can hear Vilgefortz, and he offers Bonhart 2,000 florins, which is apparently retirement money, right?
Yeah.
Vilgefortz tells Skellen that he has many spies and they can help him. And he's like, ooh. So Skellen tasks Joanna with trying to read Ciri's mind, which turns out to be a terrible idea, right?
Yeah, definitely not a great idea at all.
I love this bit where Joanna goes feeling around in her mind and Ciri can feel it and she pushes back and it like knocks Joanna on her ass. Those abilities, the strange kind of powers that Ciri has, have been awakened by that mind probe, basically.
Yeah, it said that she basically forced the power back onto her.
Yeah.
Is she fully magic now, or was it just during this time?
I don't know, because it was weird. Basically, remember, Falka offered her everything, with the fire, and she was like, you can have it all, we could take the world, and she was like, no, I renounce everything, and her power just all went away.
Yeah, and it's interesting that she, then went by the name Falka, even though she didn't have the power that Falka promised her, and now that she's getting the power back, she doesn't want to be known as Falka anymore.
And this is really cool. She basically does psionic blast, isn't she? Like mind
Pretty
blasting
much.
them, and their noses are bleeding. Like Joanna is down for the count, knocked out.
Yeah.
And a guard comes over. Remember, I think that's one thing Vilgefortz tells Skellen, you have spies in your midst. And a guard comes and sets Ciri free. She's like, I'm here to help you. And that's one of the spies that we don't get to know very well, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
And there's another, with Joanna, there's also Chloe, I think, a character named Chloe, and they're all trying to kill Ciri. One tries to, shoot her with a crossbow, but then they get shot by the spy. And then, as Bonhart comes out and he wants to chase after Ciri as she hops on Kelpie, but the spy jumps on him. He unfortunately kills that spy. We'll never know anything more about the spy, but
no.
Skellen,
maybe there's a prequel.
He hits Ciri in the face with an Orion star. Now here's one thing is an Orion star the same thing Coderinger had, like a shuriken?
It was, yeah. It was the exact same thing.
Okay, because I was like, is it something on the head of a mace, or it's
no, like a morning star? No, yeah, it was a ninja star, basically.
Because it's a pretty bad cut, and I'm wondering, did it just ride down her face, cutting
Yeah,
it
it went all the way up, I guess. I don't know.
It's pretty messed up. But she, even though she was not delirious, she held on to Kelpie with all of her might. And I love they're like, that wall's 7 feet tall. She won't make
It'll
it.
never make it.
Yeah.
What a horse!
And the horse jumps over the 7-foot wall, and they're just like, I can't believe my eyes.
Yeah,
Aren't
and then
they
the guy who catches her gets the horse. It's like, you're not going to catch that horse.
Yeah, look, they're like, what a mare! You know, can you believe that horse? They're like all just like, wow, that's the best horse I've ever seen. But, and then it talks about, like, for weeks, like, even Boreas Munn, who was their tracker, couldn't track her. There were rumors of the wild hunt erasing her tracks. Ciri had simply vanished. That's what Joanna says. So, as Ciri's prepping to leave, she takes goose grease and soot from the fireplace and puts it around her eyes, like these dark circles in her eyes. And she thanks Visigoda, and she heads off to the land of 100 lakes. But not before she stops in, I believe this place is called Dundare. Was that it?
Dundara, I think is how he pronounced it.
And they're the bandits the guys who work for Stefan Skellen. They've been there way too long, looking for Ciri.
And we get the stupid jerk's voice again that appears in Witcher Bingo.
He's like, oh, it's All Hallows Eve, the Samhain.
Yeah, exactly. And what they're talking about, how they're going to basically go and have their way with the daughter of the blacksmith.
Oh,
and they're like, well, should we make him watch like they do? And
their intentions were really bad.
Yeah, they got what was coming to them.
Yeah, they have a beggar. They're like, first they want to run the beggar off. They're like, no, have him tell us a scary tale. And so he's like, a night like this. He's basically telling them of impending doom. On a night like this is when the dead come to life. And they're like, this is boring. Let's go rape the blacksmith's daughter. Basically.
Yeah, basically.
And so the guy goes outside, I guess, to fetch their horses or something. I forget why he goes out there, but he sees that Falka, the girl on the horse, has arrived, and he's like, she's here! At first he thinks she's dead, like she's come back to life. Because aren't they debating that? There's no way that girl's still alive. She's dead. She's just boned somewhere. Something ate her remains. That's why they can't find her. So when she turns up, that guy's like, it's her ghost!
Yeah.
And she comes in there, and they're like, oh, you fell right into our trap. You didn't know we were here, did you? And she goes, no, I knew you were here, dumbass. She came in there to kill them, and that's exactly what she does. The description of like how you can hear is just they're like as they're dying, choking on their own blood and stuff. It's just like, damn.
Yeah.
And then the beggar,
she's back at it.
The beggar tells Ciri that whoever you meet will not avoid death. And she's just like, okay, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I'm aiming for.
So let's go to the land of 100 lakes. By the way, can I just say the finish of this book is like, mwah, magnifique.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, definitely. But before we do, we have to cut back to Visigoda, who heard the banshee crying in the background.
What's funny is the way it's spelled in the book is like BAN space apostrophe SHEAA.
Well, he pronounced it Banshee, but I just thought that was a pronunciation of that I had never heard of before, and so it was actually spelled that way. That's interesting.
So as I was looking, I was like Banshee, and I go, oh, Banshee. Okay, that's a Banshee. Okay, now I understand. What is it? The cry of a banshee means someone will die?
Yeah.
And Visigoda realizes that, hey, that's me because I'm having
And so that's what I was kind of wondering. I was like, before we get all those things about somebody like peering into the window and everything, I was like, well, maybe was that the banshee who was peering into the window? I don't know.
I think it is meant to be ominous, like something will happen here. Something is foreboding, and eventually what it is Visigoda has a heart attack and dies.
Yeah.
And it's sad because I really liked him, and he wanted...
I did too. I wanted him and Regis to, like smart off to each other.
Yeah. He was
like
a good guy. All he cared about was Ciri's well-being. No matter what she told him, telling her that she was like on the run and, she was a criminal and all this stuff. Like, he didn't care. He didn't judge her.
Yeah, no, not at all. All he did was help her.
So when it cuts to the Land of 100 Lakes, there's like a description of a fisherman. He's been out there all day ice fishing, and he notices a rider, and he's like, why the hell is there someone on a horse over here? Like, it's freezing cold. And the person, who is Ciri, asks for directions, and he points her the way, and he rides home. And as he's riding home, he passes by 14 riders, which includes Bonhart, Skellen, Rience, with Vilgefortz on the phone, basically. He's on Bluetooth, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting is the men that, I guess they'd woken up, they'd had nightmares about drowning. And they're all kind of unnerved about it. Like, I dreamt I'm going to die, and I'm going to drown. Now let's go walk on this frozen lake.
On the lake.
It's like, maybe something's trying to tell you something. And I love this whole part where they're like cursing because they've got to get off their horses. And first they want to separate, and then like all of Stefan Skellen's men, don't they like, we're leaving. And they're like,
they're not sure because Stefan Skellen, they don't know who they're being loyal to at this point.
Yeah.
They think they're being loyal to him, but they're like, well, he's not loyal to the Empire anymore. They're just very confused.
Yeah, they're like, why am I here? And by the way, those guys who left, smart, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we hear, like, we kind of passed over it. Tawny Owl's reasoning for doing this is that he wanted to overthrow the Empire to create a democracy.
Yes, that's hilarious, isn't it?
Yeah. So his intentions are good, but it comes at the price of, betray or capturing Ciri and having her tortured, which is not good.
That kind of reminded me of the end of Game of Thrones when they're trying to figure out who will be the king, and who says it. It's like, what about a democracy? We let the people decide. And they're all like, and they all laugh. It kind of reminded me of that. And so Stefan Skellen, who's a horrible person, he wants to create democracy. It's like, okay. Maybe he's just sick of taking orders. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Well, and I also, just before we move on, I love how that was how Vilgefortz got him over to his side. And he was like, hey, you can be the head of the secret police, and you can usher in a democracy. So it seems like Vilgefortz isn't even doing this because he wants to rule over everyone. I think he just wants to have the most power, like magical power, I guess, or he's just completely lying.
Because real quick, before we get to the end, we get more and more bit with Yennefer, where she awakens. She's being kicked by a bunch of men. She's greeted by Rience and Vilgefortz. Vilgefortz is laughing, or whatever. But we realize now this is way in the past.
Yes.
Because Rience is here now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they put her in a torture chair. And remember, Rience says, I'm going to use these hands to torture you. These hands or something like. He's like, okay, we get it, dude. But she's bound.
He's so pathetic. It's funny because in the first book, he was like the big, bad, awful guy, you know? And it was like I was saying a lot in these books. In the first book, it's usually the bad guy is just kind of a glimpse of what's like to come, and that's really how this one played out as well.
Yeah, he's basically just a lackey, He
is, yeah.
And, he's got a burn on his face from Yennefer, but it turns out Vilgefortz is burnt now on his face because...
he's really messed up.
When Ciri went through the portal, it exploded in his face, basically. And he was like... Bleh! And they bound Yennefer at her ankles and wrists in a chair, and they stick needles into her neck and her hands and tubes up her nose. And this is where Vilgefortz says that he needs Ciri's placenta.
Yeah, that's all he needs.
And I'm like, gross. But basically, he describes by hurting Yennefer, a loved one of Ciri will help him track Ciri, right?
Yeah. All she has to do is focus on her.
It reminded me of like Empire Strikes Back by them torturing Han Solo and Leia and Chewie or whatever would make Luke sense that his friends are in danger, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That makes sense.
And she's resisting. In fact, a lot of time passes here, how they've been torturing her, trying to get to her, show us where Ciri is, but all she can think of is just think of Geralt instead. That's like her defense. That's how they know where Geralt is, not because Yennefer is spying for them. It's because that's the only way she could keep them from finding Ciri.
Yeah.
But another thing that I forgot to bring up is that Rience has lost contact with Vilgefortz on his little box. And he's like, hello, are you there? Oh no, this is not good. I can't reach Vilgefortz. So, cut back to the lake, and the men, their horses are sliding on the ice. They have to get off their horses and walk. And they're like, I've tracked her footprints. She walked this way. And so they're all like, spread out, men. And it's super foggy. And they're like, we're on her now. She'll show up in the fog any moment now. We're close to her. Isn't it funny how all these men start getting more and more terrified?
Yeah, definitely.
And they're just like, she could be anywhere, you know. And all of a sudden,
just panic.
They start
They're moving onto the ice.
You start hearing the shh, shh,
yeah.
Shh, and they're like, what's that scraping sound?
Yeah.
And they realize
this whole part, it's like you were saying, it was delicious. It was pretty awesome.
Because now Ciri has turned the tables on him, and she's basically like, she's like a horror movie killer at this point.
Yeah.
And there are men in the fog just like going, ah! And they're like, who was that? And then like, over on the other side, ah! You know, like I scream.
Yeah. Well, and we had heard before that when she was on the Isle of Skellige that she was an amazing skater, and so she straps the skates back on, and it's awesome.
She can do pirouettes now
on ice,
man, on ice. And what's funny is before all this happens, Bonhart's like, forget this. I'm going to go get my horse and ride around the lake. And they're like, no, Bonhart. And he's like, let him go. So he leaves. So meanwhile, Stefan Skellen and Rience and them, they realize she's skating around and cutting them down one by one. And I love where he's like, Rience, you turd, do something. So he's like, all right, I'm going to summon some magic. And he summons a bolt of lightning that cracks the ice.
Such an idiot.
They all fall in the water and they're like screaming for help. Rience basically, he pleads with Ciri, please, you want to know where Yennefer is? I'll tell you where she is. But she doesn't take the bait, and she ice skates over his fingers, severing his fingers off.
Oh, it was great.
And he sinks into the water. Yes, that guy is such an asshole. And what I love,
I mean, when we first saw him in the first book, the first novel, right? We wanted that to happen, and we finally get it. And it is everything we had really wanted to have happen to him. It was great.
Remember, the first thing he does is he tortures Dandelion. So we knew that we wanted him dead for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is he sinks to it describes him dead at the bottom of the lake, and there's the box floating down with Vilgefortz going, hello? Rience, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello? And I love that.
He must be in a bad service area.
Yeah. The caller cannot be reached.
Yeah.
Please check the number and dial again, Vilgefortz. So he's dead, and Stefan Skellen falls in the water, but she spares his life. Would you have done that?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
I assumed, like, if I left him, he's going to just freeze to death, you know?
Yeah, that's true. But that's never how it plays out in these types of books.
But she even tells, okay, we'll get to that. But anyway, she gets to she's taking care of all those guys. As Bonhart is rounding the lake, he sees Ciri, and he's like, I've got you now, girl! And he's like riding. She's like, oh shit. So she's running, and the fog parts, and there's no tower. And he's laughing. He's like, there's no tower! Where are you going to go now? And she keeps going, but the tower appears before her, which I thought was cool. And then, like, these...
I love the description as well.
Isn't it like... I was like, is it the Wild Hunt, or just these ghosts of knights and stuff?
I assumed it was the Wild Hunt.
Yeah, go to bar him from... But he ignores them. He's like, I'm not afraid of you. You know, I'm just going to go past it. There are illusions conjured by the girl. And he keeps going, but she enters the tower and then vanishes. And he's just like, he basically gives a no.
Yeah.
But he's like talking all this shit. He's like, I own you. You're mine. You know, and I was just like, oh, dude, you need to die.
Yeah. That's going to be very enjoyable.
But when she enters the tower and she's ascending the tower, she sees different doorways, I guess, imagery. And one of them was this way back in Blood of Elves when Yennefer was showing Ciri magic. There was a door that she says you must never open. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I almost felt like it was describing that scene to us where Ciri was on the other side of that door. Am I making that up, or...
I don't know. I didn't really have that connection myself, but it makes sense.
I thought that was really cool. But Visigoda visits her, and she's like, Visigoda, you're here. And he's like, I'm dead. Hey!
Yeah. Sadly, I'm dead.
Sadly, I'm dead. She's like, I did it, Visigoda. I killed the men, but I let Stefan Skellen go. You know, I showed mercy. Like, hey. He's, like, proud of her.
Yeah. It was very touching. You know, when he was, didn't she call him like an old, what was it, her old raven or something like that?
Yeah. He disappears, and she goes through the doorway or whatever, and we see two unicorns drinking from a lake. And they're not afraid of her. They just look up at her, and they're like, oh, whatever, you know, go back to... And what is he playing? Is he playing a, I don't remember the instrument. We hear music.
I don't remember either. Was it a flute?
Yeah, let's say it's a flute.
Okay, that works. An electric guitar.
And Avalak looks up at her, and he says, what kept you? And that's the end of the book.
Like I was saying before, this book, in terms of getting through it, was not the easiest book. It's not really my favorite book in the series. But that ending, that whole like last hour or so of listening was one of the best parts of the entire series.
It really was. Ciri going from kind of being victimized to seizing her own destiny and, you know, taking life by the horns, doing what she needed to do and not fearing those men anymore. She basically made fools out of them. She humiliated them. And I love that. And it shows what a badass she is. But also we learn that her Visigoda, I can't believe I forgot to say this, tells her what her abilities are, which is essentially, can she control time and space?
She can control time, yeah.
And I was like...
Which I'm like, well, that'd have been great to know when I was getting my friend's head sawed off.
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool revelation. And it makes me really excited for the Lady of the Lake to see what happens there. Because one thing is, you know, we know Yennefer, she's captured right now. Geralt, he's somewhere with the druids where he no longer is a witcher, apparently. Neither one of them have any idea what has happened with Ciri. So I just can't wait till they see her again and see what she has become, you know?
Yeah. And like we were saying, I think we both kind of assumed that this story was going to be Geralt and Yennefer saving Ciri. But it's really turning out kind of to be the opposite.
She's saving herself. And do you almost feel like that now it's time? Remember, she said she actually sees Yennefer captured, and she goes, don't worry, Mummy, I'm coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really Ciri's going to save everybody else.
Exactly.
And that's awesome, because I didn't know that. And it was so funny. I just think back to what Yennefer said. Like, Geralt, he'll just get turned around and involved in something and then forget why he was there in the first place. And I was like, oh my God, that really is Geralt.
Yeah, it really is. It was. I can't believe we're finally here to the last book of the main timeline.
The anthology, you know.
And this book is considerably longer than all the other ones, so that will be interesting to see how we tackle that one. Yeah. But there's just so much. I look and see that it's like 20 hours long, and I'm like, I don't know how they're going to wrap all this up, you know, in that time frame.
And what I need to do, and what I should have learned a long time ago, is to start keeping notes after each chapter I read, instead of trying to remember everything afterwards.
Yeah, I get it. Definitely. Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you think we'll have a Torque appearance? It's kind of our last chance.
We'll see. We'll see.
I mean, I don't think there will be, but I hope so.
One thing about this book, no Scoia'tael, no elves type stuff.
No,
part of
and really no dwarves, which is kind of my favorite.
Yeah,
some of my favorite stuff in the book. Right?
I mean,
what was your impression of this book in terms of reading it?
Okay, I was going to say we did have the dwarf in the mine that they questioned.
That's true,
and we also had Avalak the elf. I enjoyed a lot of this book. There were parts that I had trouble getting through. The Cahir chapter with Dijkstra, I had trouble with. Afterwards, now that I realize what's going on, I think I understand it better now. And I think Baptism of Fire is just going to be my favorite for a while.
I think so, yeah.
Tower of Swallows had moments of that. They quickly separate Geralt from his Hansa. Mm-hmm. And, there's parts where he's with just Cahir, or there's parts where he's with Angoulême and Cahir, but he's not with Regis and Milva, and there's times where they're all together, but I loved Baptisms of Fire, how they're all together all the time, but I think it's magic when they're all together. I think it's fantastic.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing for me. I guess I came away from this book a little bit disappointed that we didn't get more of that, because the parts that we had with Ciri were just it's just such a downer, and I know it's important to the story, but the parts that I love in this series are the more lighthearted, fun parts,
right? A lot of dark stuff happens to Ciri, and it's hard to take. The stuff with her and Visigoda are fantastic. I think they're great.
They're definitely fantastic, and it's not me knocking the book, because I know all of this is incredibly necessary towards her story. It's just in terms of sheer enjoyment of reading, it's probably lowest on the list for me.
Yeah.
But like I said, that last chapter was some of the best stuff in the entire series.
There's times where Sapkowski has to do some world building, and sometimes that interests me way less than character interaction, and I have trouble with it. And it's been that way through all the books, honestly. When he'll start to describe a city or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm following you for a bit. When are we getting back to our characters? But I realize it's necessary, but at the same time, it's not what I get excited about when I'm reading the stories,
Exactly. And it was also, I remember I texted you, I was like, does he hate Ciri? Like, does he have some problem with her? Because, man, he's putting her through the ringer.
Ciri gets abused, and it's time for her to do the abusing next.
Exactly.
Because she had her moment with Falca and taking vengeance upon the world, and she denied that. So it'll be cool to see how she uses her power, but her way.
Well, I'm also really interested to see how the relationship between her and Geralt will be now. It was this father-daughter relationship, but she's really kind of progressed past that. And so that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most of the next book, is to see that interaction between the two. And it's not as if they can just sit there and pick up where they left off, because she's changed so much.
She's basically independent now, where they don't need to mother or father her or baby her. She's like, well, she kind of went through a lot of shit, and she fought her way out, so who are we to tell her what time to be home at night,
Exactly. Well, that's what, when Avalak was talking, he was saying, Geralt was asking him if he would find Ciri, and he was like, yes, but you'll immediately lose her again. And I'm wondering if that's what he's referring to.
Like, she'll be there, but then she's like, well, I must be on my way, I have things to do. And they're like, but Ciri? And she's like,
but if we've been looking for you everywhere.
Yeah, I got things to do. I like how she referred to herself as, I'm a Witcher girl.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So as she was cutting those men down, calling them monsters, she then kind of felt trepidation, like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, maybe not. Maybe Visigoda's right. Like, I'm not meant to just simply be a Witcher. Because even, Geralt, in what he is as a Witcher, how could he ever go back to that simple life after this?
Well, he never even really seemed happy doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he seemed miserable in the first two books. He was not happy at all. And so, he's not going to be able to go back to that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I did enjoy the book very much, but Baptism of Fire still remains at the top.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm loving this. I can't believe we've gotten this far in the book series. Ross, thank you so much for doing this with me, because I always enjoy talking about the books with you.
Yeah, I enjoy it too, and I'm enjoying all of the people that are listening. I never really imagined we'd get that many listeners, so we really appreciate you guys downloading every one of these.
Yes, we're getting awesome downloads. We've got a lot of great reviews on iTunes. We've got like 16 ratings on there, which is awesome. I just want to keep it going. Like, guys, if you want to visit witcherbookclub.etlandfill.com, you can find, that's where the episodes are, but also you can find us on iTunes and Google Podcasts and Stitcher and all that. But we'd love to hear what you think, especially because we're on the final book of the anthology next, The Lady of the Lake. I'd love to get some voicemails of what you guys have thought about the saga so far. Send them to nimpodcast@gmail.com. Wouldn't that be awesome if we had some voicemails to play?
That would be. I would love to hear what people are saying about it, because I'm wondering if other people, I know I bring this up a lot, but if other people get as confused as I do.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there are moments. Mainly, I'm like, okay, I think this is how you pronounce this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have the luxury of Peter Kinney. But it's funny because you say Cahir, and then in the book he pronounces it Cahir, but then on the show I think they pronounced it Cahir. So I'm like, now I'm confused. I don't even know. I don't know who to believe at this point. I'm just going with your pronunciation.
I pronounce everything my own way now, by now. Like, okay, I own this. It's Cahir. It's Anguilem. It's Milva. It's Dandelion. It's Geralt. It's Krakencrate.
Very good.
It's Rience. You know, before I was like trying to like Rience, I think I was just making it more difficult than it had to be.
I think so.
Avalak and all of that. I'm having a great time. I love this world. And here's the one thing I promised myself, Ross. When I finish all these books, when we're done with all the book shows, I'm going to play the Witcher video game.
Oh, really?
Because then I'll like go, hey, I know that. I know those people. You know, I would never play.
That's not the way he pronounces it on the audiobook. What are you doing?
There's actually 3 games, but the first one is pretty old, and the second one's kind of dated, you know, so I think I might just start with The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Well, it's really exciting to see the amount of publicity and excitement that people have for the world now that the show is there.
That's the show now made Geralt of Rivia a household name, you know.
Exactly.
And before the Netflix show, you know, The Witcher is popular, but now it's like everyone's like, toss a coin to your Witcher. Everyone knows Dandelion as Jaskier. And it's...
I still can't do it.
Yeah, he's Dandelion.
He's Dandelion. Sorry. Every time they say his name, I'm like, yeah, it's Dandelion.
I still love the fact that these men find his memoirs in a cave. They think it's going to be riches inside, and they just see it's papers, and they kind of just toss it aside.
Throw it into the fire. I know. We didn't really talk about that. I'm happy you brought it up, because we're getting all these quotes from 50 years of poetry and everything, or half a century of poetry. But I'm like, did nobody ever get the chance to read it?
I know. And who were the 2 skeletons there?
Exactly.
I love it. It's so great.
Love it too.
There's just the characters. Just you love them.
Yeah, you really do, and that's why I said this book was so difficult for me. Is that I do love these characters, and it's I know it's a necessary part of any story to have them go through these awful things, but it was a little hard to listen to.
Yeah, especially, we leave the book with Yennefer basically being tortured every day.
Tortured, exactly.
It's like, oh, okay, well, see you in the next book, Yennefer. Sorry about that.
Hopefully you don't die.
Yeah, sucks. But I'm really looking forward to Ciri rescuing her.
Me too.
Awesome. So, guys, that's it. See you with the next book, Lady of the Lake. Thank you for joining us on the ETL Witcher Book Club.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Ross. Bye. Here's some fist tech. Oh, sorry. Pass
I already have my
tech,
own.
Man.
Just gonna bury my nose in a giant pile of fish stick.
It's such a weird name for a drug.
It was. I thought the way he was pronouncing it, I thought he was saying fish stick.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the way he pronounced it. So I had a whole other idea aside from cocaine in my mind as to what it was.
Did you look it up? Like,
yeah, I did. I had to look up how he actually spelled it because I was like, is it really called fish stick? Like, cause that's kind of how he pronounced it.
That's right. Fish tech. You know what's funny? I realized that because I've listened to some of the, I haven't listened to the whole book on audio. I just skipped to different chapters because I want to hear how he says things. And I'm like, I wouldn't be able to understand some of the things just by listening to it, It's difficult. I'm not it's
kidding.
hard to get a clear picture.
It is, yeah. Like that's really why the second listen is kind of really important. And even on this one, it was a difficult book to follow. And I think a lot of it had to do with, like we said, the holidays and just everything over the last 2 months. It's kind of the busiest time of year for me because of the kids' birthdays and stuff. So it was really difficult to focus on this one.
I promised myself I read at least an hour a day, and like this book, I was going gaps of like a week at a time and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just hard to stay into.
I don't know what that was. I don't think there was a lot different about this book compared to the other ones. I guess maybe it just wasn't quite as enjoyable, Yeah,
I think also, reading this many books in a row, maybe we just needed a break. Like let's take the holidays off. Like maybe like as soon as New Year's was over, it's like, okay, now let's start reading the book or something like that.
Well, and I also had a difficult time, and I'm sure we can talk about this a little bit when we do the show one. It was very, like, I've never watched a book or read a book series so close to watching the show. Yeah. And it was difficult for me to divorce the two in my mind,
Oh,
like the entire time I spent it comparing the two, which I didn't really want to do. And it wasn't comparing like one was superior to the other. I just couldn't separate the two in my mind,
Yeah. There's one part in the show where I did a what? Like that. And Heather was like, what? And I go, never mind. Don't worry about it. But it's when Vilgefortz sits down with Yennefer and he goes, she's like, who the hell are you? And he goes, I'm Vilgefortz of Redavine or whatever. And she's like, I don't know who that is. And I was just like, what? Yeah. Like that's Vilgefortz?
Their whole take on his character, we'll talk about it more when we do the show, but their whole take on his character kind of has me scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think I figured it out is that whole fight he had with Cahir was bullshit.
Oh yeah, it definitely had to be bullshit because when that was happening, I was going to text you like, Vilgefortz gets and Cahir fight each other and it's close. Please. That's not happening, but
like the Vilgefortz that defeats Geralt would not lose to Cahir in a sword fight.
Exactly. And also I was a little bit irritated with their take on the Doppler. I'm like, that's not like, Dudu is one of the best characters in the.
They took some liberties there, and I think I understand why. And
I definitely understand why. I just was kind of sad that we didn't get Dudu.
Yeah, and I was like, if this turns out to be Dudu, man,
exactly,
he's gone down a dark path.
Yeah, definitely. I am watching this show. # not my Dudu.
Yeah, this isn't my Dudu, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Now this is podcasting.
This podcast is part of the Pod Syndicate family. For more criminally compelling shows, articles, and conversations, head to wearepodsyndicate.com.